Hello, everybody. My name is Aaron Mazzeo, and I love surfing. I also surf weekly. Today, we're going to talk about how to change out of a wetsuit in cold weather. And you may be thinking, a wetsuit can be wet. How do I handle that wetness in my car, for example? And it's not actually that difficult. We can change into our wetsuit at home and then drive to the beach if we're close. I don't do that. I tend to get to the beach and then I change into the wetsuit in the car. Of course, the wetsuit is pretty much dry, so it's not a problem. But when I get out of the water, that is when I could encounter some difficulties with being soaking wet and then getting back into the car to change. Of course, there are many times when you don't need to change in your car. During the summer here in New Jersey, during most of the fall even, you can get away with changing outside your car or in the outside air without worrying about freezing temperatures doing significant frostbite damage to your extremities. But once it gets very cold, I would say once it gets below about 45 degrees Fahrenheit and less, it is something worth considering. So let me share a few thoughts. First, this is me from my last surf session in a 6'5" wetsuit after having had a pretty good time and it not being super cold, but it still being under 40 degrees Fahrenheit. And you bring in a lot of water in your boots and in your gloves and in the wetsuit itself. And you don't want to put that on your car seat. So you can use what's called a seat hoodie, and you can find these on Amazon. I bought this one off of Amazon, and it protects your seat from getting wet. It absorbs a tremendous amount of water. You also would want to use a wet bag. So a wet bag is often useful even in warm weather, just for putting all your wet gear in a spot that you can throw in your backpack or throw in your car and take it home with you. So I suggest using a wet bag very much in the floor of your vehicle. So you can see these are my feet. This part right here is actually the seat hoodie. And I still have my boots and my wetsuit on at this point. And the nice thing about a wet bag is it usually has some type of drawstring, and so when you're done, you can pull it and kind of close it up and keep the water that you will capture in here from getting all over the place. Once you're done taking off the wetsuit, and that's what you see here, I can stick the wetsuit and other items right in the wet bag. And of course, to be modest and clean, or somewhat dry and somewhat warm, you probably want to use some type of changing robe. Some people have made these themselves. They take a couple of towels and stitch them together. At least that's what Harry from Surf Simply talks about doing in his earlier days of surfing, so that you could change out in the open and on the beach. This is also very appropriate for being modest as you change in your car. The windows will fog up as you do this, but you still don't want people peering in and seeing something that's inappropriate. So those are pretty much the elements that you would keep in mind while changing in your car. And I believe there's some other videos and other information on the internet out there about changing in your car. I did some searching though, and I was surprised a lot of people were suggesting, hey, go behind a fence to block the wind, and those things are great. And they also probably assume that you're not going to the beach in a car. So that's something to keep in mind. I've taken New Jersey Transit train system here in New Jersey down to the beach from where I live without driving. And that's fine during the warmer season or warmer months of the year, but it would be very difficult to change after a surf session in one of those train cars. I don't suggest doing that. But taking a surfboard on the New Jersey Transit is just fine. Some things to keep in mind as you're doing this. You don't necessarily need to be running your car the whole time. Just the enclosure of your vehicle protects you from the wind. And if you've been surfing and you've been paddling and working out, you're going to be pretty warm. But if you try to take off a wetsuit in 20-degree Fahrenheit weather, you can't get it off quickly enough. And that's why you want to do this in a car or in some other type of enclosed containment system, I guess. I don't advise trying to do it in a porta potty. That could lead to some unnecessary dirtiness, shall we say. So the car, I think, is a good option. And one other thing to keep in mind is that taking off a thick wetsuit takes a little bit of time. So even if you think, oh, I'll just get the wetsuit off really quickly and keep myself from freezing my toes, if it's really cold, it could actually be very dangerous. So that's why another reason why I suggest doing it in the car, or maybe the same reason for doing it in a car. When you are changing in the car, it's a good idea to have everything that you need, your clean clothes, or the clothes you're going to wear again, next to you. And I often throw that stuff in the driver's seat or in the back seat. That's easily accessible. So I'm changing in the passenger seat, and so I guess I'm kind of assuming that I'm by myself when I'm doing this. We have a minivan, and I've changed in the back of the minivan as well. But I feel that changing on a seat hoodie in a sedan, in the passenger seat, is pretty nice. And it's pretty clean. And unless you've kind of opened up part of your minivan so that the seats are down and you got an open space to change, it's not much easier in a minivan. In fact, it can be a little bit harder because you can't stand all the way. When you lean back the seat, that's another thing I suggest doing. Lean back the seat for changing, and also because that's how you transport your board. It's not bad to have that, and you can kind of lay out, stretch out, get things off, and pull and tug a little bit to get things off. You will slide around, so that's something that you can keep in mind as well. Another thing that you might keep in mind is that as you're sitting on a towel or wet robe, like this green one I showed you, it's going to get very wet. So it's going to get wet on your backside and down by your legs. And, you know, that can be a little bit awkward as you're putting on dry clothes. So you can kind of pull up and you know, get your dry clothes on without getting too much interference with the robe. Another thing that can kind of be a little bit awkward is the seat hoodie gets wet because you've been sitting on it with a wetsuit. And so you might also think about at a certain point folding up. So the seat hoodie I just kind of put on, but I don't like clip, I don't tie it all up, so that near the end when I'm getting my dry clothes on, I can actually just flip up the bottom portion of the seat hoodie, so I'm actually sitting on the seat, and that's dry because it's been protected. And if you have your dry clothes, you're going to be pretty much safe and fine from getting other parts wet. Okay, so I am a big fan of being able to change in the car. I live 45 minutes to an hour away from the beach, and waiting till I get home after a surf session is not what I consider to be the best way to go about changing after surfing. I haven't tried waiting an hour in a wetsuit afterward, but I imagine it's going to be pretty cold. These wetsuits, they hold the water in pretty well. That's part of the insulative property of a wetsuit. And I think that you're going to be pretty cold if you wait to change until you get home. If you do wait to change until you get home, it's not advisable that you take a hot shower because the hot water can damage the wetsuit. And I think we should have another session sometime about how to go about changing or maintaining and cleaning your gear. And the secret there is just lots of water, not salty water, lots of fresh water. So if you have any comments or thoughts on that, please let me know. I'm interested, but this has been a game changer. This is allowing me to surf on a weekly basis throughout the year, changing in the car. How do you prevent fogging? I wanted to talk about this because last week we talked about a DIY approach to modifying your sunglasses so that they could stay on your head. And I just wanted to point out that with the sunglasses, you will want to make sure that they fog as little as possible. And people will comment about sunglasses and how they fog or they don't fog. And it's a combination of the heat that's coming off your face and the amount of air that's able to pass through. It's plus what is the outside temperature. And what you can do to prevent fogging is, one, make sure that that little band that we talked about last time, right, that goes on. And the paracord and carabiner setup, make sure that that's the right length so that there's a little bit of a gap for air to come in between your face and the glasses. So that's one thing. But the other thing that I do is I spit, right? And that's common practice, but you spit on the inside part of the sunglasses, so these regions, and you swish it around, all right? And you want to let it dry. So one thing that I've done while I'm changing into my wetsuit in the car, or if I'm outside of the car, I spit in my sunglasses fairly early in my changing process. And if you've got this little thing, what you can do there is just hang it on the mirror. And by the time you've got your wetsuit on, this should be pretty dry and should be pretty ready to go. And it will be a little blurry, likely, for the first few minutes of getting out of the car and getting into the water. But as soon as your head goes under the water the first time, that nice little rinse cleans off, I guess, any excess gunk from your spit or the thicker regions and kind of makes it more uniform, and you should be good to go. And it's a very clear image that you'll get. If you've spit on it and you've got a little gap, you will not have to worry too much about fogging. So I just wanted to mention that. I don't think I talked enough about fogging in the last episode. And I also wanted to point out the benefit of using these mini carabiners, right? So these are these little clips. I think, it would maybe look a little bit funny, if you're walking around all the time with this thing on the back of your head. But I will suggest that for most intents and purposes, after you take these things out, these things being the carabiners, you're not going to be able to see the hole that you drilled in very well. Like, you can see it because you're looking right at it. So when I put it on, and it's a little bit behind my ear, so this is kind of the vanity check. I guess you might be able to see it a little bit, but when I'm driving, no one cares, and I can use these sunglasses for their regular purposes. So I just wanted to point that out, that you're not destroying the glasses, in my opinion. You're adding functionality to them. And so, I think this is a great way to save your eyes. This is in my case, this is a prescription set of sunglasses, which means that I don't have to worry about losing contacts. Well, that is a little bit of information about how you change out of a wetsuit in the cold by being in your car and having your car prepared. I will note my car is not particularly fancy, or maybe it's fancy but it's very old. It's a 1997 Lexus that I definitely did not buy or get new, and is actually one of those things that parent to the child kind of thing, which is great. And it was close to 20 years old, I think, when I got it. So having a junky car maybe pushes me toward thinking, oh, I'll just change in my car. It's not that big a deal if I get a little salt water on the door or anything. But I do think that the seat hoodie and a wet bag would allow you to do this in a nicer car that you're more concerned about as well. And then once again, I think sunglasses are great for being able to protect your eyes and being able to not have to worry about losing contacts and being able to see the waves. My prescription is such that I've been out without my glasses on, and it's probably a little bit dangerous because I can't quite see the type of the wave, size of the waves coming, and then you have to worry about other people as well. How was my last surfing session? So I went out yesterday. Last week I was looking at, when we talked on Friday, I thought about the sorry, I got distracted there. I thought maybe Wednesday would be the day to go out, and I was looking at Wednesday, and it was a little jumbled with the wind when it came. And a week ago, I didn't think that the waves would be good enough. But it turned out that Wednesday and Thursday, the waves were pretty good, 3 to 4 feet, and Surfline was saying 3 to 4 feet plus. And I thought the wind would be a little bit better on Thursday. It was peaky, so the waves were all over the place in terms of where they were breaking, and it was also high tide. I would have rather been able to come out later in the afternoon, but I had work, so I had to go out in the morning. And I got out probably around, in the water, I was probably starting around 7:40 a.m. and high tide was around 8:15 a.m. and I got out around 9. So maybe the best quality wave was one of the first ones, was probably the first one I caught. And I was kind of excited about it. It was good. I had lots of energy because it's the first wave. And I was on it, and then I leaned. I wasn't leaning enough into the wave. It was a left, and I'm a goofy footer. So I just kind of fell off, backward as I'm facing the wave. It was frustrating, but okay. But that was probably the in terms of my surfing, that probably, and the size of the wave, that was probably my best opportunity to, pump and go down the line. I caught a few more waves, and I did probably catch, I think, it's probably my biggest bomb drop in New Jersey, which is not saying much for many of you, but it was, I would say, a 5-foot wave. It was one of those things where there was, a small wave that I wasn't planning to catch. It went by, and then immediately behind it, there was suddenly this enormous, the one right before it wasn't so small, but it blocked my view. And then the next one coming, I was like, oh, it's a big one. And I think I'm in the right spot. And I was in the right spot. And I was able to kind of turn quickly and catch it. And it was a right. And it was woof, went right down. Probably wasn't the most impressive looking in terms of being able to get speed or maintain speed, because I was going down the face of the wave pretty fast, but I held on and I was super excited. I was like, yeah, I got this thing, going to the right. So that was fun. At high tide at Belmar on Thursday when I was out, was doing, or the waves were doing something kind of strange. They looked like they were about to break and give you a nice ride, but because of the bathymetry, I guess it got a little bit deeper, and so they were about to break, and then they would die down, and then they would kind of get a little fatter, and then they would break. And so it was a little bit tricky because when you got more on the inside, you didn't have much time. And this is how East Coast waves often are. We don't have much time to get to our feet. And I was concerned. Well, I wasn't just concerned. I got a few wipeouts because I went in kind of on the farther side, and given my skill level, this thing was curling, or I was too far in, and it led to some fun wipeouts. But this big wave that I caught, it was big enough that it broke before it got into what I would guess is a slightly deeper region where a lot of waves weren't breaking, and I was able to catch it, and I had a wonderful time. So it only takes one wave to make a session worth it, and that was a great wave for me. Even though it probably would be standard or subpar for many really great surfers, for me it was a lot of fun. When do I plan to go surfing this week? I don't know. I don't know. This is the there are multiple things happening in my life personally, but I'm also concerned. Well, maybe not concerned. I'm not very impressed with what seems to be coming down for us here in New Jersey. Last week, I said, hey, Wednesday and Thursday, it looks like the wind might be okay. And then if the waves shape up, we could have some good surf or reasonable surf. And that was what that happened. So I'm hopeful that maybe looking, I don't know, the wind is probably going to be okay on Monday, but I don't think we're going to have much in the way of surf in terms of swell. Tuesday, maybe it could evolve into something. So that might be a day to watch. I think I was just looking at one of the webcams, and we have some freezing rain warnings and things today, but today, this afternoon, it might turn out to be okay. And then tomorrow morning, maybe it will be okay, but that's quite a bit of wind. It's quite a bit of wind. So I'm not sure if there's going to be good surf this week, but we'll keep looking and keep hoping that something will develop. Just like to thank you for watching. I hope some of these tips about how to change in your car might be useful to you. I hope to see more people wearing sunglasses to protect their eyes, to prevent the loss of contacts. But I'll be out there looking kind of silly for now and enjoying the surf. See you next time.